I would like to start with a few questions on valuation. So first of all, before I really come to the valuation game, I want to understand, what does really valuation mean for a startup company?
Right. So, firstly, thanks for having me here. And what you're asking me is a very pertinent question as to what is valuation, right? So, let me start with a very simple example, right? So, if I were to present you a watch, what would you pay for it,
The price,
right? Is it
yeah,
the price? But it is an expensive watch and it's only one of a kind. What would you pay for it,
brand,
right? And let's say it's gone to the moon and come back and does not
luxury.
exist anywhere else. It does not exist anywhere else in the world. Would you still pay the price or would you pay more than that?
I would pay more than that, a lot more than that.
Right? Right? So value at its very core is what the consumer is ready to pay for it because of the perceived benefit that he gets. So similarly in startups, we also value the business for the potential that it brings and the revenue that it can generate. These are based on various metrics, including revenue, profitability, customers, varies from sector to sector. But it is to arrive at what is the value that I attach to the startup and the potential that it brings. And that then determines the number that you attach to it, and then you invest on it, and there are other aspects to it.
So, since valuation is, a lot more than what we really have the perception of it. So, what do you think? Like for a startup company, valuation is the whole soul which really matters, or what does you know should really mean for a company? What it should really mean for a company?
So I would say in today's world, unfortunately, with the investment boom in 2020, 2021, everybody went after valuation and it became a key point, and we had many unicorns that also came by, right? But when you go back many decades or even a century or before, business has always displayed very fundamental facts. That is, one, you need to solve a problem. You need to solve a problem faced by many people. You need to run a business that is profitable and sustainable over a long period of time, right? And over the journey, build a brand and build a trust with your consumers, right? At the same time, you can't ignore competition as well, and you can't ignore the market. So you have to evolve. There are various other factors which unfortunately have been forgotten for just valuation increase from round to round. But let me reiterate, the fundamentals of business, of running a sustainable, profitable business catering to consumer requirements, still remains the essential focus.
It remains the essential focus. So, do you think that startups today have, since the phenomena of unicorn has entered in the picture? Don't you think that startups are focusing more on valuation instead of credibility?
That is, yes, that is correct. And that is the reason why you would see uh, many, those who did not focus on the business fundamentals, one, moving out of the unicorn bucket, two, many of the valuations being written down to what is reasonable, right? And many who did not focus on the customers, even not being in existence today.
So, in such case, like what according to you are the five key factors that you or maybe an investor should really look while investing in any startup for that matter?
Great question, actually. So, fundamental factors, right? One, as I said, is it a problem that you're solving? Is it a large problem faced by many people? Three, do you know your customer and actually meeting their requirements? Four, have you taken care of competition and innovated continuously to stay relevant? And fifth and most important, have you conserved capital and built a sustainable, profitable business which will run for the long term. Today, startups in the valuation game have only looked at running a 100-meter race. But
Right.
whereas business or running businesses is actually running a marathon. So those would be my few pieces on what are the key elements that I would look for in a business as an investor. But then again, the three principles that I use to invest is I look at the founder quality, I invest in great founders running great businesses, which means that they have clarity of what business they are running, available at fair and reasonable valuations.
In such a case, what do you think? Like when an investor really go out to invest in any sort of a business, so there are two things. First, we have startups. Then we also have small businesses which are not recognized as startups. So there is a clear distinct between these two type of companies. So as an investor, what do you think? Like an investor should invest in a small business or in a startup? Like what is more credible from investors' perspective? And
So,
at the same time,
sorry,
what
go
is
ahead.
more beneficial?
Understood. So, I'll slightly differ on those point, right? Because I really don't see a distinction between the two. Because the word startup that we use is is a definition of few characteristics that businesses display. Startup does not have any definition per se in the market. It's only certain characteristics that businesses display. That is one, these are businesses which are actually out there solving a very pertinent issue and building probably a tech or a solution that needs an initial investment of capital to bring about a solution. In short, they are innovators, they are uh, disruptors trying to solve a problem. Second, they can adapt to market conditions, or they quickly change their models, they change their ways of doing business to adapt to the market conditions. Third and most important is, given that they're building something new, profit is not a priority in the first few years. Any business, any small and medium business that kind of displays these characteristics can technically be defined as a startup. Now, let me take an example, right? There are large businesses which continuously innovate, but will they set aside profit, or will they be nimble to change to market conditions? Not necessarily, but they continuously innovate. And then there are businesses, let's take, for example, like Uber, or let's take, for example, like Swiggy, which disrupt, which might be incurring loss in the first few years, but bring about a transformative solution, right? And those are what we define as startups. So coming back, I don't really see a distinction between definition of a startup and a small business, but anything that displays these characteristics absolutely can be a startup. Now, to the second part of your question, which is more beneficial, the
Right.
key element there is for us to look at the potential and what exactly they're solving. Yes, the reason why startups have picked up is the promise that they bring to the table of explosive growth. If done right, they actually bring about a transformative change. If today I ask you, how did you move from point A to point B, right, 15 years ago? Trust me, many of us would have even forgotten how we moved if we were not using public transport, right? We would have booked a cab 4 hours or 5 hours before and waited in anticipation for the cab to come. But then Uber came, transformed it, and it's on demand, right? So those are the kind of solutions, and those are what potential actually startups bring to the table.
Okay, so it is basically the idea which investors really focus on, and the
Yes.
like problem solving approach. That's right. Also, if we come to the funding part, a lot of startup these days, not just a lot of many of startups are facing funding winters. There is no such huge big news of funding. So So do you think that funding winters is going to stay for a lot of months?
So let me answer it in two parts, right? So one, funding winter or the climate, as you call it, or the drying up of investments is primarily because larger deals or larger check sizes are not being cut, right? So these startups are not able to raise funds. But that does not mean that VCs haven't raised funds in the last 1.5 years. The last 1.5 years, they might have not invested, but many funds have actually raised a lot of money and have the investable capital ready to be deployed. So, which means that the story of investing in startups remains buoyant and promising. It's just the right fundamentals that need to come in place. And that is where easy money that was available a couple of years back, the fundamentals have changed. And those businesses that display these basics of being sustainable, of being profitable, of having a clear revenue path or having a clear path to profitability, as we call it, are those which are being looked at to say whether they're consistent, and then they get investments. But yes, this transformation across the industry will take some time, and this cautious approach, I wouldn't call it winter as such, I would say a more cautious approach to investment would continue at least for the next 4 to 5 quarters, in my view.
All right. So do you also think like if there is a sudden funding winter, do you think that there could be a reason that the startup ecosystem has probably reached to its saturation level, because we have been seeing startup ecosystem growing rapidly for quite a long time, and now suddenly there is a flat time. So do you think that it has reached its saturation point, or will it reach there anytime soon?
Oh, absolutely not. Not for the near foreseeable future, in my view, for the very fundamental reason that I don't think we have even scratched the surface of the ideas that one can pursue and build a business out of. Right? I would even just go back and refer to the very recent conversation of Sam Altman, right? That India does not even develop technology, right? So look at the potential that is there for businesses to pick up and develop promising tech coming out of India. And we produce the most number of engineers and the best tech talent across the globe. So there itself, we have not scratched the surface. Second, if I talk about the volumes of transactions, and let's take fintech or financial inclusion, I don't think we've even covered a fraction of the market, right? Retail, needless to say, with India's population, there's enough and more room to grow. Digitization, right? Or logistics. All these are sectors which have huge potential still to come. I would say we're still in our very early days as far as the startup uh, ecosystem is concerned. Yes, there has been a significant boom, and people have slowly started to recognize the concept of startups and build that market. But for it to even hit its stride and maturity, I think will take some more time. But a very, very promising space, and there is no aspect of it hitting a ceiling and slowing down. Yes, some fundamentals around, let us say, just set up shop and get seed funding, or just buy revenue. So those aspects might go away, and more fundamental, more stronger businesses might survive. But the uh, the promising startup ecosystem, I think, is here to thrive and only grow from here on.
Okay, so one last question I would like to ask you is, a lot of unicorns these days are facing valuation markdown, and it has come as a trend now. So, what is the reason behind it?
So as I explained, right? So many businesses went out and said that I have got an endless source of capital, and I can pass on deep discounts, buy customers, and show my revenue growth. But again, businesses are not built on discounts. Businesses are not built on freebies, right? Businesses are built on solid fundamentals. And as I kept repeating often, on fundamental needs of the customer being solved. needs of the market being solved, and most importantly, timing the market and addressing competition and solving a real need, right? That is where fundamental businesses are built. Many businesses today have realized the need for that. So probably they were inflated and there was a lot of capital coming. So when they did not, when that vanished, they have to come back to fundamentals. They have to come back to basics. They have to trim back on unnecessary spends. And that is where you see a semblance of reasonability and balance coming back, right? It'll take some more time. And consequent to that is obviously the funding markdowns and etc. and other aspects that we are seeing today in the market, right? And most
Right.
importantly, I would say we are going back to basics. Many generations, if you go back multiple generations, you would say that people would say that I don't want to take a loan or I don't want to leverage my business and run it. I want to run a profitable business. I think those sensibilities or sense or basic aspects are returning to thoughts and people are working towards that.
Right.
And therefore, you would see stronger businesses emerging out of this tumultuous times.
Right. You have explained it pretty well. So thank you so much for your time, Mr. Vikram. It was really nice talking to you and such insightful session it was. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Pleasure is mine.